Well, we just had a whole show, pre-show. Sorry you guys missed it. Oh, hey, Nick. Thank you for showing up on time and early, actually. Had some questions about some topics we're going to be sending out. Also had a great recommendation to send out our show notes beforehand so people that are watching live with us in the studio can be prepared and participate. So the only way I know how to do that is if you guys register like 24 hours in advance to the event that we have that's posted on Crowdcast. So if you do that, I will send them out to you. It takes your email. I can email you, and I will do that in the mornings if I have them by then. So that is an incentive for you guys to show up and to register and to be part of it. You can see our show notes, and I can't say that we're going to stick to them because oftentimes we get to like half of it, or we totally go on a sidetrack and off the rails. But that is the plan, and I will get it to you.
Listen, I'm not gonna put anyone on blast because I don't know if people want their names out there. But listen, there's a guy in the chat right now that asked me. Well, he didn't ask me, but he just said that there's an anti-Doug Wilson, an anti-Federal Vision woman out there writing lots of stuff against Doug, and he kind of mused to us in the chat. I wonder if she has a crush. And what I said was, listen, I've had my White Claw spritzer, so I'm just going to say it. Definitely a crush, because the thing is, even though they claim not to like it, women appreciate a guy with a little bit of backbone. Women appreciate a guy that will tell them no from time to time. They might not act like it, but they really do. Like, you can't just cave to everything a girl does. She'll never respect you. She might think you're a lovely man, but she's not going to respect you.
What is this, the patriarchy podcast?
Listen. There are some things you should say yes to your wife for. Lots of things. But when they're wrong, sometimes you just got to tell them they're wrong. It's okay to tell a woman that she's wrong.
And, you will get blowback for it, most certainly, being married almost 8 years. And my wife's listening to what I'm saying, so I'm going to be careful. I can't hear what you say.
Well, let me tell you this too. I was thinking about doing a video, and just a very short video of that exact woman who was ranting about Doug. She subscribed to me on YouTube. Whoa. And yeah. And I was like, what does this mean? Because she blocked me on Twitter, and then like a day later subscribed to me on YouTube. And I was like, what is going on here? But I didn't, because I'm too mature. I'm too mature for that.
Too mature. Well, I think we need to say that this is Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet. And my name is Matt Williams. I'm co-hosted by A.D. Robles, the chauvinist over there.
That's right. And I like I said, I've had my White Claw spritzer, so I'm ready to go.
So he's loose and feeling good. I don't even know who this person is. I'm going to have to check her out and see really what the damage is.
Just don't. She's Federal Vision. You don't want to see that. Federal Vision.
Yeah. I hear that's contagious. You got to be careful with who you
can't. Yeah, with. You can't read the tweets, otherwise you'll get it.
Yeah, for sure. Where can they find you, AD, if they want to follow you on these sites or block you?
Yeah, yes, both are very relevant things to do. YouTube is the best place. AD Robles, Robles, or Twitter. I tweet occasionally.
You're coming out, man. Yeah. You're doing it. I see you more and more every day.
We'll see about that. But it's at Real AD Robles. At Real AD Robles.
Great. And then you can find me at How to Build a Tent on all the social media sites. I'm especially active on Twitter nowadays because I
you are. That's true.
Yeah. I'm building notoriety. I'm getting big Eva people tweeting at me nowadays. So I'm doing something right. They're not following me. They're just tweeting at me. Oh, man, what are we going to talk about today? Oh, I wanted to say this. Last show, I feel kind of bad, and I almost need to apologize to you. I feel like I've kind of jaded you against science. We talked about Richard Dawkins and his study, and the very next day, you come out with this whole, scam of science. It's not even real.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. But listen, that was already planned. It was just providential. But what I will say though is that if you haven't watched that video, it's called Lies, Deceptions, Every Day More Lies, and it's about a variety of different things. But I when I was a kid and I found out that those photos, so to speak, that I saw from NASA weren't actually legitimate photos, my world collapsed. And so if my world's going to collapse, I'm going to bring everyone down with me.
Honestly, I didn't know that. I was
a lot of
watching your show, learning things, taking notes.
And did you look into it at all? Because a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's not real." No way. That blue marble picture on my iPhone, that's a real photo, and it just isn't. I mean, they admit it, and then, but what I don't understand is a lot of people in the comments of my YouTube video said, "Well, they did release a new picture that is actually real," and that's true. Like there's a satellite that Japan has like 1 million miles up there, is what they say, and they have a photo now. And it looks pretty good. I mean, it's not like bright like the blue marble, but it looks interesting. And what I wonder is, and they call it the gray planet because it kind of looks a little gray. It's not that colorful. But what I wonder is, like, why didn't they think that was enough for us? Like, I just want to see what it really looks like. I don't want to see an Disney artist's rendition of it. I want to see what it really is. And the picture that's real, that they say is real, it looks awesome. It's just not as fantastical. That's fine. Like, why can't we handle the real stuff? I want to handle the real stuff. Right.
Yeah, that's just the elitist in them thinking that us common folk can't handle what they know. What they
I'll never forget when I read that. It's like, oh yeah, the hardest part was doing the oceans and the clouds according to your expectations. And I'm just like, what kind of crack is this? This is stupid. This is a scam.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to sell me a book? It's like a drug dealer. It's like, yeah, I'll give you this crack now and you'll feel great. Like, it's like, I don't know.
Well, they tried to sell us the Big Bang, so I don't know why I'm surprised that they're trying to sell us all this other stuff too. So
I'm surprised because the Big Bang, at least I can understand. Like, they're trying to replace, the creation story. I get that, but this is like the real stuff. The real pictures are good. Like, why did you have to make an extra fantastic one? Like, I just want it's interesting enough to see Earth from space in itself. Like, you don't have to add stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
I don't like that.
And then, so the last thing I want to talk about, enough of this science crap.
Yeah, I don't like science anymore. I don't even believe in it.
We're Christians. We hate science, right?
Oh man.
But I'm starting to have a little change of heart, and this has to do with my Twitter that we were talking about earlier today, or before the show started, that Beth Moore was talking about going out and voting however you felt and let your conscience be your guide, and the Jiminy Crickets. And then I replied back, I'm like, and then don't vote for the party that's advocating for the murder of children. And I got tons of pushback, which is shocking to me.
Simple enough, right? I mean, it's not that controversial.
I wasn't even saying go vote Republican. I mean, if you take my friend A.D. Robles's position and don't vote, that's better. And she replied back to me, which I don't know why I felt proud about, but I did. I admit it. And then I felt ridiculous about being prideful that Beth Moore retweeted me, because I see that she, or not retweeted me, replied to me, because she replies to people like Kyle Howard. So it's like, well, that doesn't put me in good company.
They're buds. They're like family.
I know, man. Oh.
It's weird. It's creepy.
Oh, he had a tweet today that I just responded and never answered back. It's just this general about white pastors get away with everything the minority pastors don't get away with in the church. And it's unbelievable. And I can't believe that they're on Twitter still and no one says anything. And I just reply, can you give me one example?
They are mean.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm one to talk. I'm pretty mean on Twitter too. I feel like I can take a little more liberty than a pastor would. A pastor probably has to be a little nicer and more political. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm just a podcaster. I can be as blunt as I want to be. I don't have a flock. Is that right? I don't know.
That is right. But let's go back to the tweet. So yeah, don't vote for baby killers. That's a good tweet.
But I couldn't believe how many Christians were mad at me for saying that and Trump's better. Oh, the Republican Party is better. Oh, what about the Syrians that they left to die? The Kurdish forces. Like, you think and it was just like,
yeah, it's better than killing me right now. It's better than killing babies. Yes,
it's better than killing babies. I know. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, listen. Let's just break it down real quick. Allowing adults who are in some kind of a beef with each other to kill each other is objectively better than saying it's a fundamental human right to be able to kill children. I don't have any problem saying that. And I'll say it all day long. I mean, if you don't understand that, like, you've got some serious problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is why I'm bringing this up, not just to talk about Twitter once again, but it is kind of like the public square nowadays. So I'm not really embarrassed about it, especially for Christians, apparently. No?
No. You shouldn't be embarrassed.
Oh, okay, good. I thought you were disagreeing that it's like the public square. I'm like, I thought that was pretty much. But like that we can't get these basics right makes me really think that we need just to say, you know, forget caring about government and who's in charge. We just need to get our church in order, and we need to start voting bad leaders out of our churches. And I don't know what that looks like. Someone asked me about that. I tweeted it. It's like, we need to just focus on the church because we're losing the battle there. And it doesn't matter what happens with the government if we can't even get it right in our own organization. And what I was saying, and someone asked me, like, what do you mean vote them out? You can vote out bad leaders? And I'm like, I don't know what it looks like for your church and how you're structured, but that might even mean you just leaving and going to another church or not supporting like the Russell Moores or the Beth Moores of the world. Because if we can't get that right, if judgment doesn't begin in the house of the Lord, it doesn't matter if we have a Republican that doesn't kill babies in the government. Like we can't even agree on more basic morality together.
Yeah, I mean, it's so this is interesting because I talked to my brother, my biological brother, a lot about this exact thing, where it's like there's basics here that we're disagreeing on, and it's disagreements with people that I would say that are actually Christians. So like if I disagree with a liberal that doesn't believe that Christ was God in flesh, like, okay, whatever, you're a pagan. Obviously, I disagree with you. But there's a lot of people that I actually do respect, and I do think that they, you know, they're Christ sacrificed, you know, for their sins as well, that are disagreeing with basics. And this is something that you can even say, even as something as simple as baptism, right? Like, I'm a Presbyterian, you're a Baptist. Like, that's a very foundational, basic thing. Like, it should be easy to come to some kind of an agreement there, but it's not. And so the fact that we're still arguing about baptism and we can still say we're believers, I believe you're a believer, you believe I'm a believer, that's great. But we still don't understand like even the sign of the covenant and when to administer it. Like, that's so basic. And it's like, this is a good sign that like, I personally don't believe that we're close to the end times. In other words, I don't think Christ is coming back tomorrow. I don't think so. I think we're in early church history, even to this day. Like this 2019 is early church history still. And when there's going to be Christians thousands of years in the future, they're going to look back at this and be like, what kind of idiots were these? They didn't understand when to baptize people. Like how could that be? You know what I mean? And this is not my idea. You know, lots of people have said this kind of thing before. And I think it's true. I mean, if you look at the basics that we're just missing, like if you don't like honestly, like if we can't agree that it's like way worse to kill children than it is to allow people that are at war with each other to fight each other, if we can't agree with that, like we have a very fundamental misunderstanding. Like we're infants.
Yeah, definitely. And seriously, if you just think of it logically, like you are responsible for what God has given you responsibility for. And if you are a governor of a country, then you're responsible for what happens over that country. But you're not responsible for what happens to another country. Like God's going to hold you accountable for what you govern, not what someone else is supposed to be governing. Right. It's like, I'm not going to be held accountable for your sins and vice versa.
Right. That's right.
Kind of the same basic thing. But I'm okay. So you kind of little hinted at your eschatology there. So, and then I have some questions. Are you post-mill or amill?
Post-millennial. Yes, definitely.
Do you have to be post-mill to be Presbyterian?
No, but I think you should be. and I also think that you should, if you're going to be amillennial, you should at least be optimistic about Christ's, you know, victory in time and history. But a lot of people are pessimistic. I mean, that's the standard thing. Like, well, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket before Christ comes back.
Yeah.
But things might go to hell in a handbasket, but Christ is going to come back after he gets victory.
Okay, so you said a few interesting things that I'm kind of curious about as a pre-mill person myself. So we are in early church history where we don't understand some things that we will understand more in the future. So your idea is, or the post-mill theology, I don't know how you'd say that, teaching or understanding, is that we're going to learn more and more and more until we get to a perfect understanding?
No, not necessarily. And so let me just say this. So I don't know. I don't think that the Bible tells us for sure that we're in early church history. So let me just say that right off the bat. That's just a theory of mine based on what I do know about Christ coming back. And so let me pull up Isaiah 65 here. This is the Old Testament passage where he talks about the new heavens and the new earth, right? So this is pretty relevant. And man, I don't want to like have some dead air time here.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to tell a joke while you're doing that.
I'm trying to pull it up while we're talking here. Oh goodness gracious, let me.
And you're supposed to come prepared. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do here?
We weren't supposed to talk about this. Anyway, so here it is. So this is Isaiah 65. New heavens and new earth. Behold, I create a new heavens and a new earth. Okay, so this is what most people assume is like. This is talking about heaven, essentially. And the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind, but be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem to be a joy. And he goes on and he goes on and he goes on. Then he says this. He says, no more shall there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man that does not fill out his days. For the young man shall die 100 years old, and the sinner 100 years old shall be accursed. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. And so what we're saying here is like if this is about the new heavens and the new earth, and we think of the new heavens and the new earth as like, this is when like Christ's church is really powerful here. But if you notice, like people are still dying in this time, right? Like there's no death in the eternal state in heaven, but yet here there's death. An infant was not going to live only a few days, but a young man will die at 100 years. So there's still death here, right? Yeah. So what I think is that we have a time to look forward to where our lifespans will be much bigger than they are right now. Like right now, we die at 80 years old. You know what I mean? So that's when we're old, when we turn 80. But this is saying like we'll be 100 years old and people will still consider us young. I think there's a golden age of humanity where we're going to figure out a lot of stuff. And I think part of that, of course, is going to be our theology. We're going to know when to baptize people. We're going to know, like, it's not cool to kill children. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to know that stuff. And I think that that's something that we have to look forward to, because if this is what we have to look forward to, where we don't agree on almost anything, that's not victory. Like, that's not Christ putting all his enemies under his feet. Like, there's still a lot of enemies out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know for sure that we're in early church history, but I just think it, because this doesn't seem like a very united church to me, you know?
Yeah, no, tell me about it. Would you consider calling that golden age the millennial age?
I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. Yeah, but kinda, yeah. But I don't like to tie it to that one verse, but yeah.
And Nick says that you mentioned increased knowledge that goes along with sanctification.
That's true.
And does it? I don't know. To me, sanctification means becoming more Christ-like, not necessarily head knowledge. Because there's people that know more than I do that I wouldn't say is more sanctified than I am by any means. In fact, I would say that there's people that know more about the Bible that aren't even Christians than I do.
Sure, that's true. So it's not like knowledge automatically leads to holiness. But I think it's very difficult to have like increased holiness without increased knowledge. So like if you don't know what God tells you to do, it's hard to do it. But I think it's possible, I suppose, to do what God wants you to do without knowing what he wants you to do. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But it's not like one automatically leads to the other. But I think it's very hard to have one without the other.
Yeah. I don't think we're supposed to be idiots by any means.
Yeah.
But I think and I don't know what this looks like, but that is a point where I think we need to be driving. We need to stop being so worried about politics right now. And we really need to be addressing the sphere of sovereignty of the church. Because it seems like all of these attacks are coming. We're seeing character assassinations like that video you talked about on today with James White. We're seeing these plays run where we're vilifying people. We're calling people racist that aren't racist. all of these plays that we've seen play out in the public space are now coming to the church. And it's like we almost need to regroup us pre-mill, post-mill, our baby baptizers and our confessional faith baptizers. And we need to like rally the troops with people that are actually genuinely seeking God and wanting to have by the word as the authority, or we're going to be losing a lot or have a lot more casualties. I would think we'd be going backwards. What the opposite of post-mill?
Listen, I know you're not Federal Vision, but I need to ask anyway. Are you have you watched the Man Rampant stuff on Amazon?
I watched half the first episode late at night and I fell asleep. But I need to watch it again.
I did it. So I've watched 2 now, but initially I had just watched half of the first, and it was great, and I just never got back to it. The second half of that episode is so good, and it's talking about this exact kind of thing where it's like, what we really need right now are just individuals, a few individuals that just won't go along with this. You know what I mean? Like that they just won't go along with this whole project where I can call you a racist and everyone's like, we hate racists. And there's no evidence for it. It's just nonsense. And it's just like it's just the pitchforks and everyone's getting all uppity and pissed off. And it's like, we just need a few guys to just be like, I'm not doing that. Right. Yeah, he's not racist.
I feel like we have that.
We do.
But I feel like it's not the people in power. It's not Big Eva. It's not the people,
and that's the point,
are in
though.
Control.
And that's the whole point. You don't need the people in control to do this. You just need some guys in the local body, and you only have control over your family, yourself, and your family, and you have a lot of influence in your local church body. I mean, comparatively to the whole country, and then like really most of us, and I include myself in this. Like I have a small platform on YouTube, but in general, like I'm influencing my family and my church, and that's pretty much it. And like a little bit on YouTube. Most of us aren't these leaders. And so if we just have people that are willing to do that and say, I'm not going along with this stupid stuff, that'll be enough to turn the tide, essentially. Just be faithful with the little things and that'll turn the tide. And then, it'll make it easier for someone that has a bigger platform to be like, the emperor doesn't have any clothes. I'm not going along with this.
Right. And I honestly, I've been thinking about it and I pray about it a lot every day, especially with how much I'm talking about it on Twitter. I pray about it that I'm just not going to be sinful and say something I regret or say something that's biblically incorrect. And so I want to be loving. And even if I'm like, mocking or whatnot, I want to be a loving mocker, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But
I have to work harder at that.
I know. And that's like one of the things too, I wanted to say after last week's episode that I was feeling not bad about, but I really wanted to communicate. Hey, Cal, how's it going? Is that as podcasters, it's really hard to walk the fine line of talking about serious issues and being relevant and funny and catchy. And like, especially when we talk about the issues we talked about last week. And if you don't know, you can go back and listen to it. But like, there's going to be times where we overstep our boundaries and we're going to need to like apologize and just readjust. But that's a really hard line to walk, to talk about abuse and then have a podcast where you're supposed to like carry and be entertaining for people to watch. Yeah. And like, I'm going to mess up. I'm just saying that right now. I left that episode and be like, oh my gosh, I'm in so much trouble talking about these issues and trying to like be funny and all that stuff. It's like, oh man, we're in trouble. But anyways, back to what I was saying is I feel like we're in a time right now where we're kind of like circling in the desert after we left Egypt. And we have people that are trying to build calves. We have people complaining about oppression and all these things and not being fed and God not doing what he's going to do. And it's almost like we just got to wait it out. We got to wait for it to be our turn.
I'll tell you what, you are not far from the kingdom. I will say this. You're close to being a post-millennial if you think we're in that desert. You really are because the whole glory of Israel was ahead of them when they were in that desert. They had their God. He saved them. And he was guiding them and providing for them, and they weren't doing a whole lot. They were complaining and grumbling, and God would help them and stuff. But the whole establishing of Jerusalem was still ahead of them. All this stuff was still ahead of them. Christ coming back was still ahead of them. Like all kinds of stuff was ahead of them. You're not far from the kingdom.
I have to say this. For some reason, post-mill people think that pre-mill is the opposite, which means post-mill believe in this steady chart that goes steadily up.
No,
or maybe zigzags up. But there's like this optimistic, and you're like, oh, you're so post-mill because I said something optimistic. Pre-mill people aren't necessarily like negative. I'm not slitting my wrist thinking the world's over. I'm not sitting in my closet, my head between my knees. I just think there's going to be a really bad time about 70th week of Daniel.
There you go.
For about 6 years, it's going to be terrible. But I think God's going to do a lot of great things, and there's going to be a lot of great works done by the church until then. So I just needed to get that off my chest, being around all you Reformed people.
Good for you. I like that. I like it very much, and I can support that.
Thank you. And I want to talk about this more with Keith next week. I hope you can join. I sent you an email. You never responded. Like a mean co-host you are.
Yeah.
So if you guys who are listening to this are interested in hearing more about that, we're going to talk about how important it is to have a creation story and or redemptive story that is accurate. Go ahead.
No, I was going to let you finish, and then I was going to say something.
No, go ahead and say something then.
I was just going to give everyone encouragement that's listening to this. And listen, we have to, and I've been accused of having too aggressive of a tone, maybe being too zealous. And that's advice that I should heed. And I definitely do take care to watch my tone, to watch my zeal, and to make sure I don't go overboard. I don't want to do that stuff. But at the end of the day, one thing you need to understand is that the Bible doesn't ever say that being too zealous for God is a bad thing. And you should watch your tone. You don't want to be crazy. You don't want to be too aggressive. We all get that. We should be self-controlled. We should be kind. We should be gentle. We know that. But too zealous is not bad. It never really warns you against having too much zeal for God. But what it does warn you of, because I think we all have this kind of tendency, is being cowardly. And in Revelation 21, there's a group of people that God says that the lake of fire is reserved for. And at the very front of that list is cowardly, fearful people that let fear of something else besides God take over their whole lives. And so they don't say what they ought to say. They aren't zealous where they should be zealous. And so like, it's okay to make mistakes and maybe go too far. There was a great quote, man. I wish I could remember the quote. I'm going to try to remember it, but it was they had it. I think it was a Doug Wilson quote. They had it in the beginning of the Apologia radio show, where it said that we need faithful men, not careful men. And if you're too careful that you're not faithful, that's actually cowardly. That's actually idolatry. And so don't be reckless, but don't be so careful that you're just fearful all the time. You understand what I'm trying to say?
I feel you. And this goes with our pre-show show that we just had before.
Right.
Of talking about like this, it comes about from a form of idolatry. And we talk about it a lot, but it's a big issue that we are fearing other things besides fearing God. And that is, things are in place where God should be, and it causes us to have this fear. And it's a very spiritual battle that we need to fight within ourselves. All right, so let's get to our outline.
Now that we're half an hour in.
Epstein story. And this, to me, a lot of you have already heard about it, but Amy Robach, I think, ABC News, Disney, Walt Disney, the company that was created for children, sat on a story for 3 years about Epstein molesting children and having a pedophile ring and having big players like Clinton involved in it. And this reporter, Amy, wanted to talk about it, wanted to have the big breaking story, but it got squashed by ABC, by Disney for 3 years. And I don't know if you saw my show, How to Build a Tent, but I was so angry that I almost went to tears. There's just something that gets me about children being abused. And I might get a little soppy now, but I wanted to just say that this is kind of in line with what we were talking about before with not trusting science. Is we shouldn't be trusting the truth tellers of media either. Like, we can't be looking to these people to be our hope and to be our be anything like
Yeah.
close to a savior, because this is the stuff that they're doing. And this isn't the only time. I guarantee it. They've done this 1,000 times before.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to someone I listen to a lot, and he basically said at this point, like, if the media criticizes someone, then by definition, they're not that dangerous. Because if they actually truly were dangerous and had power and money and enough ability to control things, then they wouldn't criticize them. Because apparently you can get a story squashed if you have enough connections. Now, there's some speculation here, because at the end of the day, like, you know, we don't exactly know who pulled the levers to get this story squashed, but it's pretty clear, like, this story should hit all of their main. This should be in their wheelhouse. Like, they want to protect women. They want to protect girls. Like, this is like their whole thing. Like the Me Too movement. They love that stuff, that they eat this stuff up. This should be in their wheelhouse. And yet nothing was done. And it's like, so something happened. Yeah. And so it's it's crazy. It really is hard to understand. And the fact that this isn't like enough to topple ABC is kind of surprising, but maybe not really that much. But it's just like, what would it take? You know what I mean? What would it take?
Right. I know, seriously. And Nick brought up a good point in the beginning. He had put a recommendation in our question section, which is, again, something else I learned that you could do here, which is pretty cool. 3 years ago, he said that it was a horrible time politically. The Democrats, they were dealing with the Clinton server issue and infighting and all of those things, which is a good point.
And but let me say this too. Let me just stop this for a second, because this is how I think as well. Like, and also if they're doing this kind of stuff, I mean, if their moral compass is so twisted in this way, and even let me just say this too. Even the expose, like, you can see the woman, and she's flustered and angry, but not because like she didn't do anything with these, and these girls got molested. It's because she got scooped. Somebody got the credit and she didn't get it. And she's really angry about this. And that's like so twisted, right? And so it makes you start thinking like, okay, so not only if they don't criticize you, that means you really have the power. But if they do criticize you, like, what does that mean about you? Like, are you actually like really good or really dangerous to them? And so it's like, now you start thinking about Trump, right? And I didn't vote for Trump. We've talked about this on the show. I didn't vote for Trump, but they're merciless with him, right? Merciless. And it's like, maybe I'm missing something here with Trump. Maybe I should vote for this guy. Maybe he is onto something here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. And if these guys are so twisted and evil, I mean, like, and then there's no other way to describe this. This is twisted. This is evil. Like, this is worse than Darth Vader. As far as I know, Darth Vader only killed kids. He didn't molest them. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like, so here's the thing. Like, that was a weird joke, but it you know, you saw that, you know that scene where he just kills the Jedi kids. That's messed up. But anyway, like, if they're that twisted and they hate this guy, like, maybe I'm missing something with this guy. You know what I'm saying? I
know. The biggest fundraiser for Donald Trump is the Democrat Party and the media. Hands down. They're the biggest drivers of voters, I think, out of anybody. Like, they created Donald Trump in so many ways. And what I wanted to point out too is what you said, that she wasn't mad or upset that the story wasn't going to get out to save children's lives.
Not at all.
She wasn't upset about children being molested and trafficked and raped. No, she was worried about her story. And I just want to let that sink in, that these are the people that our country looks to for the truth, to look for what is right and what is fair and what is balanced, is the woman who's not even seen the disgusting, like, just scenario where she's pissed and venting about her story, not that 3 years went by and nothing was done. And like, how dare you, reporter, get upset about your career when you're sacrificing children for it? Like, you're put your career above those kids every moment that you didn't take this story and run. Every time you didn't quit and protest. Like, how dare you? And you're all sanctimonious anger. Like, I knew it. I had it all. Like, that is so gross.
It's
It's
gross. Yeah.
disgusting. And what's even grosser about all this, Disney, that, that company that's supposed to care about children, they're opening an investigation, not about how they squashed the story, but who leaked it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I read before I came on.
I didn't know that. It's not surprising. But here's the thing. Like, this is a big deal. I mean, this story is humongous. And we've, people that have been following this story, like I knew about Epstein's pedophile on a long time ago because I listen, it might be embarrassing, but I like, watching like conspiracy content and stuff like that. I like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And you gotta separate the good from the bad, but they've been talking about this for years, years, this pedophile island that he had and who's connected and everyone gets their robes on, their sanctimonious robes. And they're like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. You guys are so naive. And it turns out to be all true, basically. I mean, we don't know that for a fact, but it's all accepted at this point. It's all accepted.
He had a trial in Florida where he got convicted of some part of it and then just got off somehow because of his connections or whatever. So like it's like known, it's in the court record. It's not a conspiracy, these crazy loons.
Right. And here we've got a woman who knows about this stuff. She's interviewed the people and she's connected in some way to this stuff. And she's basically corroborating everything that we all think. It's like, yeah, he didn't get murdered or he didn't commit suicide. He got murdered, clearly. And the ABC people, they just want to be able to interview Kate Middleton and Prince, whatever his name is. And so if they pursued this, they couldn't do that. And it's like, well, okay, so we're not crazy. Number one, and number two, like the next time something like this happens, are you going to put your robes on again and talk about how you're a conspiracy theorist? Like this is huge, man. This is crazy. And so, what do you do? Who do you believe? I mean, at this point, who could? You can't believe anybody at this point,
right? And I think I'm going to step in your lane here and be a little post-mill. And say that this can easily be discouraging. I mean, our scientists are lying to us. The news is holding back truth from us. Our pets' heads are falling off.
Right. It's
what
crazy.
do we do? And the truth is like we got to do the same thing that Caleb and Joshua did when they were spying out the land. Is we got to stop looking at how big our enemies are and how evil and how much control they have. And just look at how big our God is. And like God is bigger than the news. He's bigger than science and all of those things. And you can look at this stuff and be like, how are we ever going to win? How are we going to ever create a better place in the United States? How are we going to ever stop abortion from happening? And it's not going to be because our enemies are defeatable. It's not going to be because we're going to be able to look at them and think, yeah, we got this. It's going to be because we're completely submitted to God. And that's where we need to be. That's where our hearts need to be.
There's an easy thing you can do too. And it's just like, just stop believing them when they tell you these stupid things that are unbelievable. Like when they tell you that Epstein committed suicide, in a jail where he was on suicide watch and all this stuff, which just makes no sense. And there's no videotape of it, by the way. Like just say, nah, I don't believe that. Nope.
Yeah, I know.
That didn't happen.
I don't believe that the cameras just didn't happen to be working and that there was a shortage of the staff that day. And
when they tell you that there's 8-year-old boys out there that are actually girls, and so they need to get pumped full of hormones, just like, no, I don't believe that either. Nope. Yeah, and when they tell you that Trump is the devil, just say, I don't believe that. And when they tell you that Hillary Clinton is the hope for the world, I don't believe that. And like, just stop believing them. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't watch the news or something, but just don't believe it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to watch it the same way I watch Star Wars. Like, I don't believe that there's actually a person out there named Luke Skywalker. I watch it for entertainment value. You know what I mean? Like, if you have to watch it, do it that way.
And don't believe it and then speak out against it too. Like, even if it's just to your family, like, you got to talk about these things. And this goes back to what we were talking about cowardice too. It's really hard to talk about these things before they come to light because you might look like a fool to the public. You might get mocked on Twitter. You might, get isolated at work, if you're a scientist that doesn't believe in the Big Bang, you're going to be discriminated against. You're not going to get the grants that everyone else is going to get. But you have to have courage, and you have to stand for what is true and not be a coward. And again, that's something we got to pray about ourselves. I'm not saying I've never struggled with that. In fact, I have. I struggle with it all the time. But it's something that we still have to rise above, speak out against, and not believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true. And yeah, this Epstein stuff, it's pretty shocking to me that as often as we're talking in evangelicalism about abuse and trafficking and stuff like that, that so few of the leaders are talking about this Epstein stuff and what it means for, watching the news and what it means for these political hacks that are on the news. Like, nobody really is talking about it. There's a few people, of course, but the fact that in general, there's just silence is pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking.
It would be shocking to me, except I see it all the time in politics, and I know exactly what it is. It's because they don't actually care about the issue. They're using the issue to obtain a bigger goal. And so when you see people that are passionately angry and outcrying against one specific case or a section or a group, but then don't say anything about another group, that issue is not the thing they care about. It's always something bigger, and it usually is control, and it's usually control over you. To some extent, either if it's in the church, if it's in the government, wherever it is, it's usually a power play. And it's something we need to realize. Like when they call you racist, when they are saying that you just don't understand that we need to have a certain kind of thinking about things, and you're feeling guilty, and they're using all these unbiblical classifications on you, they're power plays, and you just need to be able to call them out. Yes, I don't know what to say. But so I'm going to take a break from this heavy topic and say, because you like conspiracy theories, have you seen Hunting Hitler? No?
No.
Oh, my goodness. It's on the History Channel. It's already done. But they've proved that Hitler didn't kill himself.
Not surprising, but...
Not surprising, no. Yeah, it's based on FBI documents that were released.
Where'd he go to Antarctica? I heard he visited Antarctica a lot.
There was some theories that he went to Argentina.
Yeah, well, so that would actually be in line with what I've heard, because I heard he went to Antarctica because there was something there that they don't want us to know about, and Argentina's on the way. Anyway,
it's really good.
It's on the History Channel.
Check it out. It was on the History Channel. You got to stream it now. But it's they go back and they go through the FBI documents that they were actually hunting Hitler, the FBI, back after World War II, because they didn't believe that the Russians had him. And they go through a whole bunch of stuff. Anyways, that's neither here nor there, but it's a really good series.
That's crazy.
Okay. The next topic I want to talk about, and I'm really hesitant to talk about this because I don't know how I feel about it, but I hear his name all the time. I get sent his sermons. I get sent like clips by him. I have people that are passionately hating him, people that love him. I've seen a little bit about him, and it's Stephen Furtick.
Oh no.
And if you don't know who he is basically Elevation. He's the pastor of Elevation, which he's associated with the health and wealth gospel.
Yeah. Which
that's a red flag for sure. And he's also the victim of the first MacArthur game. So Beth Moore was the second game victim. He was the first. They asked him what one word association, which again, I don't know why he plays these games. You just get him in trouble. MacArthur.
That's why they play them.
Keep it spicy.
Right.
So MacArthur, one word for him was unqualified. And Stephen, in fact, wrote a book off of that one word called Unqualified. And he goes through about how he's a sinner and how he makes mistakes. He's not perfect and all these things. And I actually looked to try to really find out why MacArthur said he was unqualified. And I couldn't really find anything. But from what I could get from it was that he's associating with the Joel Osteens of the world. Yeah. And that he says things that are wrong.
Yeah.
And unbiblical.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, that's basically it.
Is it okay? So this is my question. There are the people that are heretics, that are people that are doctrinally wrong. There's people that just say things that we disagree with.
Yeah.
Like, how do we cut this up and draw the lines?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like, okay, there's the church discipline where like, you're teaching heresy, you need to get out, or you need to repent or leave. Then there's like the in Acts, the Aquila and Priscilla, where there was the new Christian, or not the newer Christians, but the people are preaching, but they didn't really have it all. They were preaching John's baptism. So they came alongside of him and they taught him the full truth. And then he was on his way to do ministry. So like, how do we kind of navigate this? Because I have a feeling that we're going to be dealing with this a lot.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. Yeah. I think so the reality is that there are some basics, right? So like if a pastor comes along and he says, well, Christ isn't God in flesh. Like we know that like most people understand that that's a disqualifying thing. Like you're a heretic, clearly, if you say stuff like that, right? But then there's going to be things that do relate to this, but they're maybe not explicitly that. So like, yeah, there are things that you might say that would, if you take it to its a logical conclusion, end up meaning that Christ was not God in flesh, but they don't outright say it. And those are serious. But are they, disqualifying factors? In other words, are you a heretic if you believe them, right? That's kind of the question. And there's a lot of gray area there, right? There's a lot of gray area there. And so we all have to make judgment calls, right? And some of us are going to make judgment calls that are much stricter than others. And so when it comes to Furtick, like maybe, I don't know if you want to stop there and maybe ask questions, or if you want my opinion on Furtick, I can give it to you.
No, just keep going. Yeah.
When it comes to Furtick, like, some of the errors that he makes are pretty stupid and pretty basic. And so like, I can understand why MacArthur would say he's unqualified, right? Because he's a teacher and he should know better. This is the best example that I can think of. I don't follow Furtick. I don't really care that much about what he's up to. But I remember I saw a clip of a sermon that he did. And basically the premise of this is that Jesus, like, he loved you so much, right? And like, he just loved you so much that he was willing to break God's law to save you. He broke the law for love. And it sounds so good and it preaches so good the way he said it, because he's a very charismatic guy, very good speaker. He's just very engaging. I wish I could speak like he does. I can't, And so here's the illustration. Let me just read it to you because I just pulled it up. It's very easy to find. He says, what will really turn your heart to God is not when you hear his laws, which were given for our good, by the way, but they were powerless because there wasn't enough leverage in our actions to keep the law. So what God did when he sent his son, and this is why we get excited in the church. This is why our tears fill our eyes when we think about Jesus. This is why the gospel is still good news in the world today, because God broke the law for love. I said to every sinner, God broke the law for love. I mean that he scooped you up in his arms and he's carrying you in his grace. And I mean that when the law was powerless to do what the sinful nature was weakened by God, he did this by sending his son in the likeness of sinful man. So what Furtick is saying here is that God's law said you needed to die because you sinned. But he's like, I love you so much, I'm not going to do that. You can live. No problem. You know what I mean? Like, and that's such a foundational misunderstanding. Like, that's not actually God. And some people would say, like, that is clearly an idol because God is so holy that he could not break his law. Even though he loved us, he could not break his law. That's the whole point of Jesus going to the cross, because somebody had to pay for that sin, right? So he's so holy, he couldn't just say, don't worry about it. because that's the Muslim God. We laugh about that, right? But that's what Muslims, they actually mock Christianity in this way. They're like, you needed Christ to die for your sins. Well, our God was so powerful that he could just forgive us. And I'm like, okay, but that's a bad judge though. Like, if a judge says, yeah, I know that there's all this evidence that you raped 10 women, but you know what? I forgive you. No, don't worry about it. Like, that's a bad judge. Like, that's not a holy God. And so people would see that and see that's such a simple mistake he's making. It's clearly an idol that he worships. That's not the God that I worship. And I can understand that argument. I wouldn't always make that argument, but in this case, it just seems so basic. It's like you're not qualified to teach if that's what you think it's saying.
Yeah, and honestly, I saw that same clip and I was reading the context of it, and I was like, oh, break the law? No, he didn't break the law. He fulfilled the law.
Right. It's totally different.
It's totally different.
So here's what I'll say about this. So like, does that mean he's not a believer? There's a lot of people that are going to not like this, but I'm going to say, no, I don't think that means he's an unbeliever, because he's not taken it to its logical conclusion of there's a different God out there who can easily break his law. But as far as the teacher is concerned, he shouldn't be teaching if this is how fundamentally he's misunderstanding who God is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's James 3:1, right? You as a teacher are going to be held to a higher standard. You shouldn't seek it because it is such a big responsibility that you have. And if you can't articulate the basics, then you have no business. I don't care how eloquent you are. But what I was saying is honestly, like if you got that, if he changed that, I get what he's trying to say. And he's like, I was researching this and trying to figure out where he's coming from. And like, I saw this weird YouTube video of like a game show where him and Matt Chandler were debating, and Greg Laurie and Mark Driscoll were in the background. It was the weirdest thing. I've never heard of it before. I'm going to go research it after we get done with this, because I'm really curious. It was like 20 years ago. It was like young Matt Chandler, young Justin or Stephen Furtick. And he was like, I'd use hyperbole. I'm trying to get people shook. I'm trying to say things that are going to make people respond. And I'm throwing out doctrine, but I'm just trying to get the people that are church shopping. And he goes into all this stuff. And then he's a songwriter. I'm like, and then I realized, like, I don't want a pastor, and I don't want to recommend a pastor where I'm trying to justify how good they are. Like, I want a pastor that I'm going to recommend, that I'm going to share, that I'm going to sit under, that is pulling me along. I don't want to have to try to be justifying and excusing them the whole way along. And I really just step back into that. And I think honestly, I want to give him as much grace. I want to give people as much grace as possible. And I know it doesn't sound like that in the last couple of shows where people are just like blunt, disobeying God. I don't really have grace for them. But to me, it just seems like, he shouldn't be teaching. But I'm not saying he's an unbeliever. And honestly, some of the few clips that I saw, like some of it, he had some interesting things to say and like good points that super basic. Like I would like, I
would say that because you're an evangelical.
Because I'm an evangelical, right? Yeah.
No, exactly. I hear you. Listen. There's a lot of things you can criticize Furtick for, and a lot of them are very legitimate. You know what I mean? Like he obviously is trying to entertain you and dazzle you with his very good speaking, his big budget. It's like a show when you see one of his sermons. It's like a show. And I don't believe in that kind of stuff, because I think like God's word's enough to convert sinners. Like you don't need to add game shows and nonsense, but okay, so that's a problem, but it's a certain kind of problem, right? He shouldn't be teaching if you don't know that God, can't, like when he makes a promise, he keeps it, like he keeps his oaths, he can't change, like he says something, he'll do it, like if you don't understand that about God, then you shouldn't be preaching God because you don't understand who God is. Like we get that. I'm not going to say he's an unbeliever. And then there are some things you can criticize him, like he's like a super rich dude, right? And he's got a huge house. And I see people criticize that. And it's like, well, I'm not going to criticize that because like, it's okay to be rich. If you have a lot of money and you're fleecing the flock, people say he's fleecing the flock. Well, to me, it's like, okay, let's just say he is preaching for dishonest gain, right? Like I'm just happy that there's some gospel going out, right? Now, some people would say he doesn't preach a real gospel. Now, if that's okay, fine, like granted. But just because someone's rich, that's not the real problem with him. It's the fact that he's not teaching correctly. That's the problem. Right, if someone's rich and teaching correctly, and you have a suspicion that they might be doing it for greedy reasons, well, we can still rejoice in that the gospel's going out. This is actually kind of related to Kanye, because I've heard people saying that about Kanye, like he's capitalizing on this. He's selling shirts that say Christ is King. Like, Okay, so even if he is, like, can't we be grateful that he's actually preaching Christ is king? Like, we can still be grateful for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't want to talk about Kanye necessarily, but you know what I'm saying? Like let's criticize the right things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so just in defense of Kanye, I mean, his company right now, his clothing brand is estimated around $3 or $4 billion. He didn't need to do this for the money. And then also with the Stephen Furtick thing, and I want to go back again, being rich, and this is coming from the business podcast guy I know, but it's not evil, it's not sinful. It's what is money
you would
to
say
you?
that.
I know,
White guy. You're so white.
I know, it's my white privilege speaking.
Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was
I'm recording from a country club, honestly, right now. It's called Federal Vision Golf Club.
Look at you with your chest set back there in your Federal Vision house. Evil.
I'm not even going to show you the Van Gogh out of screen right now. But like the money thing is a blessing. It's how do you look at it and how do you use it for the kingdom of God? And just because, like, maybe Stephen Furtick, let's just say he was a great teacher. His church is like 30,000 people. It's huge. 3 services. If everyone just gave $1, he'd be a rich millionaire every Sunday. And that's not fleecing any flock. He could be a millionaire off of his church if everything was right and people were just giving 10%. And like, is that necessarily wrong? No. Like maybe he would give it all back. Maybe he's doing other ministries. Maybe he's doing all these other things. But it's just so simple thinking. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about. We just need to get back to basics and what it means to be a Christian, and like the things that we think are bad are not, and the things we think are good are destroying us. Like, we have some big issues.
But we can both agree, though, that, probably shouldn't be teaching.
No, absolutely. I don't think
unqualified is probably a very good word association word for him.
And I think his book condemns him on that.
Yeah.
If you have MacArthur telling you you're unqualified and you are legitimately seeking God, you go figure out what you're unqualified for, or go pray about it. Go talk to other people. You don't write a book in pride and like basically give the middle finger. Like, I don't care what you say.
Right.
It was like the 8 Mile thing.
What's so stupid about it is that like it's I've never read the book, and I don't ever want to, so I'm not going to, whatever. So maybe it's a great book, but what I'm saying is, if that was a response to MacArthur saying that, then it's stupid, because yes, like, we're not qualified to be saved. Christ is qualified for us. But there are still qualifications for elder. So like, you can't just pick and choose. You got to believe both. And so if he does anything besides say, well, on the one hand, I'm unqualified, but on the other hand, I'm totally qualified. Like, if he does anything besides that, he's confusing the issue, and he's definitely unqualified.
Yeah. And what even adds to his greater unqualification is the critiques in his book is he doesn't even address the qualifications of elders in the Bible.
So either he doesn't understand it, or he just is using it to pridefully be like, yeah, whatever, like.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's probably what it is.
Probably.
I don't care how like lay you are as a pastor or as a Christian, you can figure out where it talks about qualifications in this day and age where we have BibleGateway.com, BlueLetterBible.com, Google, which I use often, by the way. It's really sad. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I was going to say something stupid.
I was just going to dunk on myself and say it's really sad when I'm like Googling in Bible Gateway and it's just not coming up. So I have to go to Google to tell me what I was actually trying to search for in the Bible.
Well, I was going to say that we're probably going to be wrapping up soon, but I was going to say that I knew a guy who was I don't know if he was an intern or like an associate pastor at Furtick's church. And it was so weird because he was actually a decent preacher. He actually preached a real gospel, and it was great. But he looked just like him. He dressed just like him. He sounded just like him. And it was clear he was very impressed with him, and he was trying to emulate Steve Furtick in everything. And so, of course, he had some annoying tendencies as well, because Furtick is extremely annoying. But he was a good guy, and it was just so funny that he just was so impressed with him, because I felt like he was too good to be impressed with him. You know what I mean? Like he was too smart to be fooled by this, but he loved him.
So
good on him, I guess.
This is the hard part that I get with this. And this is really why I wanted to talk about this, is because it's such a struggle for me, because I have people in my life that send me clips by him and like, oh, sermons by him. Like, hey, you got to check this out. This is so good. And they're like, and the people that are sending it to me are baby Christians. And I don't mean that as an insult at all. I mean, like, they're new in the faith. They find these things on YouTube. It resonates. Great speaker. He's saying things that have biblical truth in them. And it's like, how do you respond to them, though? Because I don't want to just be like, oh, that was great. Oh, I love that you're just diving in on that. I want to be like, warning, warning, warning. But I don't want to at the same time be like, you know what? Oh, you idiot. Like, go listen to John MacArthur.
Yep.
So what do you do?
Yeah, you don't want to do that. It all depends on who it is. And I've been in very similar situations to that, where someone will say something like that about someone like Steve Furtick. And, honestly, it all depends on who they are. And I'll always start by just hearing them out. You know what I mean? And sometimes because the thing is, sometimes they do say good things, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's good, I'll just acknowledge that. It's okay. Just because I know the guy teaches weirdness doesn't mean I'm going to say when he teaches good things is that it's not good, Mm-hmm. But it's just, honestly, it all depends. Is it an appropriate time for a conversation? Is it, mm-hmm. It all depends on who it is and the timing and all that stuff. But I don't think there's anything wrong with not necessarily dropping a hammer on everybody every single time. You know what I mean?
So fun.
Yeah.
I just replied back, he's Federal Vision, right? You don't want
That's what you do. That's clearly what you do.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, you're right. I'm never going to listen to him again. No, what I really did is I listened to the sermon and I pointed out a few things that I thought were good. And then I listed some of the concerns I have. And I just said, hey, you got to be careful and you got to really be reading your scripture and testing everything he says. Because honestly, like if you're going to be reading the scriptures and testing anything every pastor says, you're going to be okay, I think, in the long run.
Definitely. And actually that's something that as you were saying that, I was like, it's a real blessing kind of that some of our heroes, like, at least for me, this is my take. Some of my heroes are teaching some really wonky stuff right now. And it's like, well, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be like a shameful thing that someone you like, you have to be careful with, because basically everyone you like, you have to be careful with. That includes me. If you like me, if you're like me, you're kind of crazy, but like, if you like me, you still have to be careful with what I say, because, you have to compare it to the book, does the book say it or not? And that's the thing. So it can be like sort of this thing where you can kind of have a little camaraderie. So it's like, every time my favorite people say something, I always compare it to the book. You know what I mean? That's what you got to do.
Yeah, you got to do it. And also, especially for us in positions of podcasting, things like that, in the name of being careful as teachers, we need to be comparing what we say to the book as well. And that's something I do. Even like there's be times where I'll have a podcast and I do mine live usually. So it's like, I will go afterwards and be sometimes just thinking about something I said, like, did I really say that? And that's correct. Do I need to adjust that? Do I need to fix that? And like, see, like I need to be as critical about myself as I am about other people too, as far as, are we teaching what is according to the word of God?
Yeah, no, I think that's right on, man.
All right. I think that is a great place for us to end. If you have not considered becoming a patron, go over to Patreon.com/Reformgelical. You can catch us on YouTube. We release the shows every Friday. We are on Facebook and Twitter for Reformgelical as well. Saying goodbye for AD Robles. And this is Matt Williams. Thank you and have a great day.
All right. God bless.